Mark Leonard, and so on. I want to just kind of share that quite unexpectedly, I had some interaction with Constellation, the company, and with Mark Leonard directly a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And they had reached out and they wanted me to do a podcast, which was just internal to Constellation, was never released outside. And Mark Leonard actually came up with the questions and so on. And I enjoyed that quite a bit. And subsequent to that, Mark Leonard invited me to meet him for breakfast in Toronto, which I did. And I had a wonderful breakfast with him. And then after the breakfast, he and I walked to his home and we continued our meeting in his home library. A wonderful, humble gentleman. I really enjoyed meeting Mark. He has some health challenges now, and I hope he gets back on track and is doing very well. So I wish him all the best. Constellation, I have admired Constellation for a long time. I read Mark Leonard's, all of his letters, even before all this interaction and meetings. So I've really admired Constellation. But again, like the other software companies, it traded at valuations that made it difficult to step in, even though I had a lot of respect. And I would just like to say that the Constellation business model may not be well understood by many folks. So, Constellation might be buying 100, 200 software companies a year. They have a list of, people believe, somewhere like 50 to 70,000 vertical software businesses that they touch at least twice a year. And I have friends who have vertical software companies, and in talking to them, they have actually, they've been on the receiving end of these kind of nudges. And so Constellation has a significant size team that is basically tasked with both digitally and on the phone, etc., reaching out to these principals and founders and saying, hey, if you ever decide to do something, please think of us, and that sort of thing. So if you just think about it very simply, that if you had 50,000 software companies, and if you think that all these founders, let's just say, were between the age of 40 and 80, for example, and let's say they were like, 2.5% in each age, like, 2.5% of 40 or 41 or 42. There might be about 2.5, 3 or 4% who are looking to retire every year. And so if you're looking at about 50,000 companies, you might have about 2,000, 2,500 companies of founders that just naturally want to move on. There also, then you add to that people who are looking to sell even before retirement age and wanting to do something else, etc. So I think there's like a few thousand companies that would always be interested every year in a transaction. And then Constellation is extremely anal and picky because they know these vertical markets so well in terms of what they go into and what they pay, etc. And I think now with the AI, so there's a couple of things with the AI threat. My view is that the AI, coming on of AI, is a tailwind for the incumbents in the vertical market space, as opposed to providing tailwinds to Betsy sitting in HR wanting to generate some HR software on her own. And so I think that when you look at that 50 to 70,000 universe, there will be a set of founders who will have concerns about AI and concerns about whether they'll be able to make the transition, et cetera, or not. So that the number of companies willing to sell, I think, would have gone up since the AI threat has come in. And I also believe that because the market that Constellation is in, and they're like, in many cases, the only player which is willing to buy these businesses and hold them forever. And most other companies don't even want to go that small, et cetera, and buying these companies, that their multiple that they were paying, which might have been 4 or 5 times cash flow, may go down. So the multiple may go down, the businesses may stay the same, and AI is going to, for sure, reduce Constellation's frictional costs of running these businesses. So there is a case to be made. Now, I don't have a crystal ball of exactly how this will play out, but there are possibilities where their costs go down, their revenues don't get much impact, and their acquisition price goes down. And even if all those things don't happen, stock that was sitting at $5,500 that was compounding at 20% of the 5,500 went into the low 2000s. And when I looked at it, it finally came into a price point where a person like me got excited. So that is why we are interested in investing in Constellation and Topicus and all of that. Now, I would also point out to you that Warren Buffett made at least 300 or 400 investment decisions while running Berkshire for the last 60 years. It may be more than that, but he himself pointed out that 12 decisions had moved the needle, so about a 3 or 4% hit rate in terms of multi-baggers that really move the needle for Berkshire. So when I look at my portfolio, and I look at it with rose-colored glasses, I can't see any of them that are going to crash and burn, and many of them look like they'll be solid compounders for a long time. But I also know that 4% rule is not something I'm going to be immune to, or any portfolio manager is going to be immune to. So I think that many of these companies that we may think have incredible futures, the actual futures may come about very different from the way I'm thinking about it, including Constellation or including Warrior and Alpha and so on and so forth. So you should keep it in mind that none of these are, absolutely, for sure or anything like that. So keep that in mind. Going on to the third